there are going to be some things we're going to talk about during this video. And I am going to be doing my makeup at the same time. I am going to be using Too Faced products. I have Too Faced Primed and Peachy for my primer and Peach Perfect for my foundation. It is a matte foundation. And I have already moisturized my skin. I'm also going to be using this Too Faced palette. It is a limited edition Clover. And I love this palette. A really good friend of mine gave me this palette and I love it. This couple married in December of '92. She was pregnant and this is August of '93. So she was well into her pregnancy, around 5 or 6 months. She delivered in December of '93. This couple lived in a single wide mobile home in a mobile home park. And it was a 2-bedroom mobile home. And it was the typical mobile home. It was shotgun, so it was just straight through. You walked into the living room and kitchen, and then off the living room was this hall, really long hallway. It had a bedroom, the bathroom, and then the master bedroom on the end. And it had that wood paneling, floor to ceiling. At the time, her parents had no grandchildren at that time, and his parents had several grandchildren. He was the baby of several siblings and step siblings or half siblings, not step, but half. And he was the baby of, there were 9 altogether. So she was the eldest of 2 children. So she was the eldest and he was the baby. He was 2 years older than she. This was their first marriage for both. And it was in August that most of this story will take place, August and September. This couple went to church in a small local church. There were about 30 to 50-ish people that went to this church. It was a local church that most people had gone to their whole lives, and they were all from that town. Now, this couple were not originally from this town. They had moved from a different town, and unlike other people in the church, they didn't have any relatives. They didn't have any family in this town or in this church. This was a new experience for them. Oh man, I had this other, I was going to use this one for my eye. What is on my hand already? I was going to use this one for my eyes and forgot and just kept using that one. Okay. Back to this couple. They did not have friends or they did not have family in this town or this church. Most of the people that went to church there, they did have family and friends. And most of them had grown up in this town. So it was a very small, close-knit community where people knew each other. And in this town, for the most part, everybody knew everyone. So it was interesting. I am just doing a little bit of blending here. In a moment, I'm going to blend it up some more. Don't flip out. I do my makeup just a little bit differently than other folks, so it's okay. All right, so this couple began going to this church. They met each other and started going to this church in in 91. So this was all brand new for them. They met, they dated, and then they got married in December of 92. Now here we are, August, September of 93. They are in this trailer, in this mobile home, and they are having an argument and trying to get ready to go to church. And at the time, the husband wanted to and had expressed interest in being a preacher, and she had expressed very much wanting to be a preacher's wife. And they entered into this because it's what they both wanted to do. They were both they had talked about it before getting married, that this is what they wanted to do. And they were both on board. Now, fast forward to this August-September time frame, they are in the mobile home getting ready to go to church. And it was a Wednesday evening, and they began to argue. We are not quite sure what the argument was about, other than it was just a typical argument. They had arguments quite often, heated arguments. I mean, they were still newlyweds, and just, living together for the first time. It happens, you have squabbles. This particular argument began to spiral out of control and became physical. Because they were getting ready for church, this started in the back bedroom, in the master bedroom, while they were getting dressed and getting ready for church. Now, I'm going to blend this out just a little bit more. I want to blend. Again, I do my makeup just a little bit differently. I start out with the darkest portion first, and I blend it, and then I'm going to make it lighter as I go. So if you do your makeup differently, that's awesome. Their argument started in the bedroom as they were getting ready for church and getting dressed, and yes. So they began to have arguments. Things began to get thrown about, and pretty soon it got very heated and it became physical. The wife began to run up the long hallway of the trailer and was yelling that she was going to leave and that she was going to leave him there. And she was trying to leave the house. He followed her, running up the long hallway. When they got to the end of the long hallway, about where the living room started, next to the couch, he picked her up to stop her from going any further, and he threw her to the ground. And he threatened that if she tried to leave without him, or if she wanted to try in some way to leave on her own, that he would leave her for good, that she would be stuck on her own. Nobody would want her. He did call her a fat cow multiple times. He did call her a hillbilly loser multiple times. And he made her feel very badly. This was not the first time that he had called her names. This was not the first time that he had degraded and belittled her. He made her feel very bad about herself. This was the first time, however, that it got this physical. There had been things thrown, but there had not been this where he picked her up and threw her to the ground. But it would not be the last time that he would do something like that. Side note, you reach a certain age where you really want to draw attention up. So, with the appropriate blender, I will now blend this up so I don't look droopy. He picked her up, he threw her to the floor. She lay there pretty much feeling defeated at that point. He finished getting ready while she picked herself up off the floor. She grabbed her keys and her purse and began to run for the car. He actually was able to get out of the house at the same time. She was going to drive. He pushed her out of the way, pushed her out of the door because she had opened up the door and was trying to get in the car. He said, no, you get in on the passenger side. She didn't want to be left there. She wanted to get away. And so her thought was, I will get in the car and I will go where other people are. And so they went to church. On the way there, he had pulled out of the driveway. They were going down the road, leaving this mobile home park. They began to, or they continued to argue. He threw the car into the ditch, tossing her about. She had not had an opportunity to get her seatbelt on, so she was not buckled in. And this kind of tossed her around in the seat. And he jumped out of the car, ran around the back of the car towards her door. She did have an opportunity, however, to reach up, lock the doors so that he could not get in. He began to pull on the door, shake the car, and he was pounding on the window, demanding that she open the door and let him in. She tried to move to the driver's side so that she could drive away. However, being, well into her pregnancy, this was proving more difficult. And in the melee of trying to get to the other seat, the doors became unlocked. She inadvertently unlocked the doors. He was able to pull her door open, and then he began to pull and tug on her, pulling her by her clothes and her hair, and pulled her out of the car halfway. She pulled herself back into the car. He, thinking that he had pulled her out of the car, ran around the back of the car, jumped in the driver's seat, and began to drive away. She was able to pull herself into the car, shut the door, and on to church they went. When they got to church, it was evident that she had been crying. Her hair was tousled. He walked in and acted as though nothing had happened. He became a very different person than the person to whom she was speaking earlier. He became this very kind, shaking hands, hugging people, being very kind and gentle to her, helping her, get to her seat, asking if, she needed anything. Just became a different person altogether. And she wasn't quite sure. She had seen this flip-flop, but didn't have any experience with it, in the sense that she recognized or she knew how to handle or cope with this. Let me just do my eyes super quickly. Okay. So once at church, she was relieved to be around people. She saw that he had changed, and that he was back to being his kind, normal kind of self. And she was just relieved it was over. And so settled in, they had a good church service. They went home, and he acted as though nothing had ever happened. A couple of days later, they did get into another argument, and it was another flip-flop, and she learned to keep her distance physically, and knew how to maneuver. It was like she was kind of, okay, I need to stay over here, or I need to, you know. And she never really knew what was going to spark this flip or this change. So she began to be very aware of what she say and where she was standing and when it would happen. The reason I wanted to bring this up today is because when you notice a pattern where you have to be aware of what you say or don't say, where you stand or don't stand, what you do, where you go, who you talk with or to or about, when you start having to alter how you live because you don't want to set the other person off, that's a red flag, my love. We need to have a conversation about that, because you should not have to change and walk around on eggshells just to be with someone. You deserve better. I've filmed that story so many times. I really struggle with it. But it's time for me to put it out there, because I hope that in telling my story that it will encourage and motivate and challenge us and open up a conversation we need to have about how we treat one another. And we need to have a conversation about what we put up with, what we allow. We really do need to have this conversation. I will be putting out more of my experience, more of my story, more of my journey, but only because I'm hoping and praying that it will help other people come out of that situation. You don't have to stay. You don't have to be reprogrammed. You don't have to be verbally or physically abused, used, misused. Don't let them break you down, love. Let's talk. And if you haven't ever been through this, you need to be in on this conversation as well, because more than likely, someone that you talk to, interact with every day, they have. And they need you to see. They need you to hear what they're not telling you. We definitely need to have this conversation.